We are covering employer liability for a notary's misconduct, a key topic on the Arizona Notary Public Exam, governed by Arizona Revised Statute, Section 41331. The core principle you must understand for the exam is that an employer can be held liable for the damages caused by a notary employee's misconduct, but only if the employer knew about or consented to the improper act. This liability is not automatic. If a notary acts entirely on their own, outside the scope of their duties, the employer is generally not liable. However, the lines often blur in a workplace setting, which is what the exam will test you on. Let's consider a classic exam-style scenario. A notary works at a busy title agency. The manager, trying to close a deal quickly, tells the notary to notarize a deed for a seller who is out of the country and cannot be present. The manager says, "I'll take responsibility. Just sign and stamp it so we can close." If the notary complies and the signature is later found to be a forgery, both the notary and the employer are liable. The employer is liable because they directly instructed the notary to commit misconduct, thereby consenting to it. The notary is liable because their primary duty is to the public and the law, not to their employer. Now, let's change the facts slightly. Imagine the same notary, during their lunch break, notarizes a personal document for a friend in the office parking lot. The notary fails to properly identify their friend, leading to a fraudulent transaction. In this case, the employer is likely not liable. The act was outside the scope of employment, and the employer had no knowledge of it. The liability falls solely on the notary. The exam will present these nuanced situations to see if you can distinguish between employer-sanctioned misconduct and independent negligence. Another way employers become liable is through negligent supervision. If an employer is aware that their notary employee consistently skips steps, like failing to record entries in their journal, and does nothing to correct the behavior, the employer can be held liable for resulting damages. Their failure to act can be interpreted as implicit consent to the improper practices. One of the biggest exam traps is the idea that an employer's instruction absolves the notary. You will see questions where an employer pressures the notary or promises to cover any fines. This is irrelevant to the notary's personal liability. A notary is a public officer, and their commission is a personal trust. The defense of "I was just following orders" does not exist for a notary public. You are always responsible for your own seal and your own actions. To help remember this, use this mental shortcut. The boss's nod makes them share the rod. If the employer knows, instructs, or consents to the misconduct, they share the rod of liability. But the notary always holds their own rod of personal responsibility, no matter what. The consequences are severe, including civil lawsuits for unlimited financial damages, and administrative action against your commission by the Secretary of State. On the exam, scrutinize the wording. Look for phrases like "the manager directed," "the company was aware," or "the notary was pressured." These are flags indicating shared liability. Conversely, if the scenario describes a notary acting alone on a personal matter, liability will likely rest with the notary alone. For free practice questions, AI-powered explanations, and more exam prep tools, visit openexamprep.com. That's openexamprep, all one word, .com.